The snow fell like daggers from the iron sky, cutting into Hannah Vance's skin as she stumbled through drifts that rose past her knees, each breath burning in her lungs as she realized her husband had truly left her to die out here in this frozen wasteland. 3 hours had passed since Charles rode away on their only horse, taking the supplies, the money, and every last shred of hope she had foolishly placed in him during their brief, tumultuous marriage. Hannah wrapped her thin shawl tighter around her shoulders, knowing it would do nothing against the January wind that howled through the mountains of Utah Territory. The year was 1879, and she was 23 years old, alone in a blizzard that showed no signs of mercy. Her feet had gone numb an hour ago, and her fingers felt like brittle sticks that might snap off at any moment. She had been married for exactly 8 months, and for 7 of those months, she had known it was a mistake. Charles Vance had seemed charming when he had courted her in Denver, with his fancy talk and promises of a prosperous ranch in Utah. But the ranch had been a lie, just like everything else. They had been traveling to Marysville when the storm hit, and when their supplies ran low, when things became difficult, Charles had shown his true nature. He had looked at her with cold eyes that morning and said she was slowing them down. He had taken everything and left her standing in the snow with nothing but the clothes on her back and a canteen that was now frozen solid at her hip. Hannah forced herself to keep moving, even though she no longer knew which direction led to safety. The world had become a white blur, and her thoughts were growing fuzzy at the edges. She thought about her mother, who had died when Hannah was 16. She thought about the small house in Denver where she had worked as a seamstress, barely making enough to survive. She had thought marriage would save her from that life of poverty and loneliness. Instead, it had led her here to this frozen death. Her foot caught on something beneath the snow, and she fell forward, her hands plunging into the icy powder. She tried to push herself up, but her arms trembled with exhaustion. The cold was seeping into her bones now, making her want to simply close her eyes and rest, just for a moment, just until the pain stopped. "No," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. "No, I will not die here." She forced herself to her knees, then to her feet, swaying unsteadily. She took another step, then another, her vision darkening at the edges. She did not see the figure on horseback until he was nearly upon her. The man appeared through the swirling snow like a ghost, sitting tall on a sturdy bay horse that looked like it could weather any storm. He wore a heavy coat and a wide-brimmed hat pulled low against the wind, and when he saw Hannah stumbling through the drifts, he immediately urged his horse forward. "Madam," he called out, his voice deep and urgent. "Madam, can you hear me?" Hannah tried to answer, but her lips would not form the words. She reached out a trembling hand toward him, and then her legs gave out completely. The last thing she felt before darkness claimed her was strong arms catching her before she hit the ground. When Hannah opened her eyes, she was overwhelmed by warmth. She lay beneath heavy blankets near a crackling fire, and for a disoriented moment, she thought perhaps she had died and gone to heaven. But then pain flooded through her extremities as feeling returned, and she gasped at the intensity of it. "Easy now," that same deep voice said. "The pain means you are alive, means you still have all your fingers and toes, which is more than I dared hope when I found you." Hannah turned her head to see the man crouching beside her. He had removed his hat, revealing dark hair that fell just past his collar and eyes the color of warm honey. His face was weathered and strong, with a scar that cut through his right eyebrow. He looked to be in his late 20s, and there was a gentleness in his expression that made her throat tighten with unexpected emotion. "Where am I?" she managed to ask, her voice hoarse. "A line shack about 2 miles from where I found you," he said. I use it when I am moving cattle through this area. It is not much, but it is warm and dry, and that is what matters right now." Hannah tried to sit up, but he placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Give yourself a few more minutes. You are nearly frozen solid. I have been warming you up slow and steady for the past 3 hours. 3 hours." Hannah closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the realization that this stranger had saved her life. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." "No thanks needed," he said gruffly. "What kind of man would I be if I left a woman to freeze to death in a blizzard?" He stood and moved to the fire, where he poured something from a pot into a tin cup. "Here, drink this. It is just broth, but it will help warm you from the inside." Hannah took the cup with shaking hands and sipped the hot liquid. It tasted like heaven, and she had to force herself to drink slowly instead of gulping it down. The man settled back on his heels, watching her with concern. "My name is Harrison Zane," he said. "I have a ranch about 5 miles south of here. I was checking on some of my cattle when I saw you." "Hannah Vance," she replied. "Or at least, that is my married name. I am not sure I want to keep it anymore." Something dark flickered in Harrison's eyes. "Where is your husband, Mrs. Vance?" The question hit her like a physical blow, and to her horror, Hannah felt tears burning in her eyes. She had not cried once during her ordeal, had not allowed herself the luxury of breaking down. But now, in the warmth and safety of this small cabin, with this kind stranger looking at her with such concern, the dam broke. "He left me," she said, her voice cracking. "We were traveling to Marysvale when the storm hit. Our supplies were running low, and he said I was slowing him down. He took our horse and everything we had, and he just rode away. He left me in the snow to die." Harrison's expression hardened, his jaw clenching so tight she could see the muscle jump. "He did what?" "He abandoned me," Hannah said, wiping at her tears with the back of her hand. "I thought he might come back. I kept thinking maybe he was just panicked, maybe he would realize what he had done and turn around. But he never did. That son of a—" Harrison bit off the curse, clearly trying to maintain his composure. He stood abruptly and paced to the window, staring out at the still falling snow. When he spoke again, his voice was low and rough with anger. "He was a fool. Worse than a fool. He was a coward and a bastard, and if I ever see him, I will make him regret the day he was born." The vehemence in his voice surprised Hannah. This man did not know her, had no reason to care about what had happened to her, yet he was angrier about her abandonment than she had expected anyone to be. It made something warm unfurl in her chest, something that had nothing to do with the fire or the broth. Harrison turned back to face her, and his expression softened when he saw her watching him. "I am sorry. I should not have spoken so roughly, but what he did there is no excuse for it." "None at all. You have nothing to apologize for," Hannah said softly. "You saved my life. I owe you everything." "You owe me nothing," Harrison said firmly. He returned to her side and knelt down again. "How are your feet feeling? Any sharp pains or numbness that will not go away?" Hannah wiggled her toes experimentally beneath the blankets. "They hurt, but I can feel them. My fingers too. Good. That is very good." He seemed to relax slightly. "The storm should pass by morning. Once it clears, I will take you to my ranch. My housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, can look after you properly. She is much better at this sort of thing than I am." "You seem to be doing just fine," Hannah said, managing a small smile. "I am alive after all." Harrison returned her smile, and it transformed his entire face, making him look younger and less burdened. "I suppose that is true enough. But you will be more comfortable at the ranch with proper food and a real bed. This place is bare bones at best." Hannah looked around the small cabin, taking in the rough wooden walls, the single window, the simple cot in the corner, and the cast iron stove. To her, it looked like a palace. "It is perfect," she said honestly. It is warm and safe, and that is more than I had any right to hope for a few hours ago. Something shifted in Harrison's expression, a softness entering his eyes that made her breath catch. You had every right to hope for safety. Every right to expect your husband to protect you instead of abandoning you. I meant what I said, Hannah. He was a fool to leave you. The way he said her name, gentle and careful, made her chest tighten with an emotion she could not quite name. She looked down at her cup, suddenly unable to meet his gaze. I was a fool to marry him in the first place. I barely knew him, but I was alone and struggling, and he seemed like an answer to my prayers. I should have listened to my instincts. I knew something was wrong, but I ignored it. That does not make any of this your fault, Harrison said firmly. Men like your husband are very good at hiding who they really are until it is too late. You are not the first woman to be deceived by a charlatan, and sadly, you will not be the last. Hannah looked up at him, studying his face in the firelight. There was a sadness in his eyes that spoke of his own past hurts, his own disappointments. You sound like you speak from experience. Harrison was quiet for a long moment. My mother married a man like that. My father died when I was 10, and within a year, she had remarried. He seemed decent enough at first, but once the wedding was done, he changed. He was cruel to her and to me. We endured it for 3 years before she finally found the courage to leave him. It nearly destroyed her, but she survived. She is stronger now, living in San Francisco with my sister. I am sorry, Hannah said softly. That must have been terrible. It taught me what kind of man I never wanted to become, Harrison said. And it taught me to recognize cowards and bullies when I see them. Your husband is both. They fell into a comfortable silence, with only the crackle of the fire and the howl of the wind outside filling the space between them. Hannah finished her broth, feeling strength slowly returning to her body. Her mind was beginning to work again, moving past the immediate crisis of survival to the larger question of what came next. I have nothing, she said quietly. No money, no possessions, nowhere to go. Charles took everything. Then we will figure it out together, Harrison said simply. First, you rest and recover. Then we will worry about the rest. But I give you my word, Hannah, you are not alone in this. I will help you however I can. Tears pricked at her eyes again, but this time they were tears of gratitude rather than despair. Why are you being so kind to me? You do not even know me. Harrison met her gaze steadily, because it is the right thing to do, and because no one deserves to be left behind in the snow like you were. He stood and moved to the cot, pulling off the blanket that had been folded on top. You should sleep now. I will keep the fire going and wake you if anything changes. Where will you sleep? Hannah asked, concerned. I will make do, Harrison said, arranging the blanket on the floor near the stove. I have slept in worse places, believe me. Hannah wanted to protest, wanted to insist that he take the cot, but exhaustion was pulling at her like a tide. Her eyes were already closing, her body demanding rest after the ordeal it had endured. Thank you, Harrison, she murmured, for everything. Sleep, Hannah, he said gently. You are safe now. I promise. And with those words wrapping around her like a second blanket, Hannah finally let herself drift into sleep, trusting this stranger in a way she had never trusted her own husband. When Hannah woke, pale sunlight was streaming through the window, and the sound of the wind had ceased. She sat up slowly, testing her body's responses. Everything ached, but it was the ache of bruised muscles and recovering flesh, not the deep cold that had threatened to steal her life. Her feet were sore but functional, her fingers stiff but working. Harrison was at the stove, cooking something that smelled absolutely divine. He heard her movement and turned, relief crossing his face when he saw her sitting up. Good morning. How do you feel? Like I was caught in a blizzard and nearly died, Hannah said honestly, but much better than I did yesterday. "What are you cooking?" "Beans and salt pork," Harrison said. "Not fancy, but it is filling. I also have some hardtack if you can stomach it." "It smells wonderful," Hannah said, and she meant it. She pushed the blankets aside and carefully stood, testing her legs. They held her weight, though she was unsteady. Harrison was at her side immediately, offering his arm for support. "Take it slow. Your body has been through a lot." Hannah accepted his help, grateful for his steadiness. He guided her to the small table near the window and helped her sit in one of the two rough chairs. Through the glass, she could see a world transformed by snow. Everything was white and pristine, beautiful and deadly in equal measure. "The storm has passed," Harrison said, following her gaze. "We should be able to make it to my ranch in a few hours once you have eaten and rested a bit more." "Will it be safe? The snow is so deep." "My horse is strong, and I know this land like the back of my hand." "We will go slow and careful, but yes, it will be safe." He brought over 2 plates of food and set one in front of her. "Eat as much as you can. You need to rebuild your strength." They ate in companionable silence, and Hannah found herself watching Harrison when she thought he was not looking. In the daylight, she could see more details about him. His hands were work roughened and strong, with old scars across the knuckles. He moved with the easy confidence of a man who was comfortable in his own skin, who knew his capabilities and did not need to prove anything to anyone. It was so different from Charles, who had been all bluster and empty promises. "How long have you had your ranch?" Hannah asked, wanting to break the silence. 5 years now," Harrison said. "I worked for other outfits before that, saving every penny I could. When a piece of land came up for sale near Marysville, I bought it. It is not a large spread, but it is mine, and I have been building it up piece by piece." "That must be satisfying," Hannah said, "creating something of your own." "It is," Harrison agreed. "Though it is also hard, lonely work sometimes. I have 3 ranch hands who help during the busy seasons, and Mrs. Chen keeps the house running. But winters can be quiet out here." "I used to work as a seamstress in Denver," Hannah found herself saying. "I was not very good at it, but it kept me fed and sheltered. After my mother died, I had to find a way to support myself. I thought marrying Charles would give me security, a real home. I was so wrong." Harrison reached across the table and covered her hand with his. The gesture was simple but profound, and Hannah felt warmth spread through her at his touch. "You will have security again," he said. "Maybe not in the way you imagined, but you will. I promise you that." Hannah looked into his eyes and saw nothing but sincerity there. This man, this stranger who had saved her life, was making her promises that her own husband had broken. It should have made her wary, should have made her pull back. But instead, she found herself trusting him in a way that both frightened and comforted her. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why do you care what happens to me?" Harrison was quiet for a moment, his thumb absently stroking the back of her hand. "I told myself it was just about doing the right thing, about not being the kind of man who turns his back on someone in need. But the truth is, from the moment I saw you fighting through that storm, refusing to give up even when you had every reason to, I saw strength in you. Courage. And I admire that. The world tries to break people like us, Hannah. The ones who do not have family, money, or connections, the ones who have to fight for every scrap we get. But we survive anyway. We keep going. I saw that same fight in you, and I could not let it be snuffed out." His words touched something deep inside Hannah, something she had not even realized was wounded. She turned her hand over beneath his and squeezed his fingers gently. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Not just for saving my life, but for seeing me. Really seeing me." They stayed like that for a long moment, hands clasped across the rough wooden table, something fragile and precious forming between them. Then Harrison cleared his throat and pulled back, though his expression remained soft. "We should get ready to leave. The day is not getting any longer, and I want to have you safely at the ranch before nightfall." The journey to Harrison's ranch was slow but uneventful. Hannah rode in front of him on his horse, wrapped in his heavy coat while he made do with a lighter jacket. She protested this arrangement, but he insisted, and she was too grateful for the warmth to argue for long. The landscape was breathtaking, with snow-covered mountains rising in the distance and stands of pine trees bent under the weight of white powder. Several times, Harrison pointed out landmarks and told her stories about the area, his voice a steady comfort as they traveled. When they finally crested a rise, and Hannah saw the ranch spread out below them, she caught her breath. It was not a grand estate by any means, but it was clearly well-maintained and prosperous. A sturdy house sat at the center, with a barn, a stable, and several outbuildings arranged around it. Smoke rose from the chimney, promising warmth within. "Welcome to the Zane Ranch," Harrison said, and she could hear the pride in his voice. "It is not much, but it is home." "It is beautiful," Hannah said honestly. "You have built something wonderful here." As they rode into the yard, the front door of the house opened, and a small, sturdy woman emerged. She was Chinese, perhaps 50 years old, with her hair pulled back in a severe bun and sharp eyes that took in everything at once. When she saw Hannah bundled in Harrison's coat, her expression shifted to one of concern. "Mr. Zane," she called out in accented but clear English. "What has happened? Who is this?" Harrison dismounted and then helped Hannah down, steadying her when her legs wobbled after the long ride. "Mrs. Chen, this is Hannah Vance. I found her in the blizzard yesterday. Her husband abandoned her in the storm." Mrs. Chen's expression darkened, and she said something in rapid Cantonese that Harrison seemed to understand, judging by his grim nod. Then she turned to Hannah, and her face softened. "You poor child. Come inside at once. You need hot food and a warm bed, not to be standing in the cold." She ushered Hannah toward the house with surprising force for such a small woman, calling out orders to Harrison about the horse and supplies. Harrison caught Hannah's eye and gave her an encouraging smile before leading his mount toward the barn. Inside, the house was warm and comfortable, with simple but well-made furniture and colorful rugs covering the wooden floors. Mrs. Chen guided Hannah to a chair near the fireplace and began fussing over her immediately, checking her fingers and toes for signs of frostbite, touching her forehead to check for fever. "Mr. Zane is a good man," Mrs. Chen said as she worked. "He has a kind heart, even if he tries to hide it sometimes. He will take care of you." "He already has," Hannah said. "I would be dead if not for him." Mrs. Chen nodded approvingly. "That sounds like him. He once found an injured wolf on his property. Everyone told him to shoot it, but instead he nursed it back to health and released it back into the wild. He cannot stand to see any creature suffer." The image of Harrison tending to a wounded wolf made Hannah smile. It fit with everything she had seen of his character. "How long have you worked for him?" "5 years since he bought this land," Mrs. Chen said. "My husband died the year before and I needed work. Mr. Zane hired me even though many people told him not to because I am Chinese. He did not care about that. He only cared that I could cook and keep house, which I can do very well." "I am sure you can," Hannah said warmly. She was already beginning to understand the kind of man Harrison was, the kind who judged people by their character rather than their circumstances. Mrs. Chen stood and patted Hannah's shoulder. "I will draw you a hot bath and find you some clean clothes. You will feel much better once you are warm and clean. Then I will make you a proper meal." Hannah wanted to protest that she was causing too much trouble, but Mrs. Chen was already bustling away, and the promise of a hot bath was too tempting to refuse. She sat by the fire, letting the warmth seep into her bones, and tried to process everything that had happened in the past day. 24 hours ago, she had been married to Charles Vance, traveling through a storm, believing she had some kind of future ahead of her. Now she was a woman abandoned, her marriage effectively over, with nothing to her name but the clothes on her back. She should have been terrified, should have been in despair. But instead, she felt something strange budding in her chest. Hope. Because Harrison Zane had looked at her with kind eyes and called her husband a fool. Because he had promised to help her, and she believed him. Because for the first time in a very long time, she felt like maybe, just maybe, things might turn out all right. The door opened, and Harrison entered, stamping snow from his boots. He had changed into dry clothes, and his hair was damp from melted snow. When he saw her sitting by the fire, he smiled, and Hannah felt her heart skip in a way that had nothing to do with her recent ordeal. "Mrs. Chen is taking good care of you, I hope." "She is wonderful," Hannah said. "She is drawing me a bath." "Good. You will feel much better after that." Harrison hung his coat on a hook by the door and moved to the fire, holding his hands out to warm them. "I was thinking, once you are settled, we should discuss your situation, what you want to do moving forward." "I have been thinking about that too," Hannah admitted. "The truth is, I have no idea what to do. I have no money, no way to support myself. I do not even know if I am still married or if Charles abandoning me the way he did changes things." "It should change things," Harrison said darkly. "Any judge worth his salt would grant you a divorce based on desertion and endangerment. The problem is, it takes time and money to go through the legal process." Hannah nodded, her heart sinking. "Money I do not have. Which is why I have a proposal," Harrison said. He seemed almost nervous, which was so at odds with his usual confidence that it caught Hannah's attention immediately. "It is entirely your choice, and you should feel no pressure to agree, but I thought I would offer anyway." "What kind of proposal?" Hannah asked carefully. Harrison took a deep breath. "I need a housekeeper. Mrs. Chen does excellent work, but she has been telling me for months that the house is getting too big for her to manage alone, especially during the busy seasons when I have extra hands staying here. If you were willing to stay and help her, I would pay you a fair wage. It would give you time to figure out your next steps, and it would give you the money you need to file for divorce and start fresh." Hannah stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "You would do that?" "Let me stay here and work for you." "Only if you want to," Harrison said quickly. "I do not want you to feel obligated. You could also go to Marysvale. There are probably opportunities there, though I will be honest, work for women in this territory is not always easy to come by." "But the choice is yours, Hannah. I just wanted you to know you had an option." Hannah's throat tightened with emotion. This man had saved her life, given her shelter, and now he was offering her employment and a path forward. It was more than she had any right to expect, more than anyone had ever offered her. "Why are you doing all this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You do not owe me anything." Harrison met her gaze steadily. "Maybe I do not owe you anything. But that does not mean I cannot help you anyway. The world is hard enough without people turning their backs on each other. If I can make your life a little easier, why would I not?" Hannah felt tears slip down her cheeks, but she made no move to wipe them away. "I would like to stay," she said. "If the offer is genuine, I would very much like to stay and work here." Relief flooded Harrison's face. "The offer is absolutely genuine, and I promise you, Hannah, you will be safe here. You have my word on that." At that moment, Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway. "The bath is ready. Come, child. Let us get you clean and warm." Hannah stood, and on impulse she crossed to Harrison and took his hand. "Thank you," she said, looking up into his honey-colored eyes. "For everything, I will work hard for you, I promise." Harrison squeezed her hand gently. "I have no doubt about that. Now go, before the water gets cold." As Hannah followed Mrs. Chen down the hallway, she glanced back once to see Harrison still standing by the fire, watching her go with an expression she could not quite read. But it made her heart flutter in a way that was both thrilling and terrifying. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity and healing. Hannah threw herself into her new role as assistant housekeeper, learning the rhythms of the ranch and the particular quirks of the house. Mrs. Chen was a patient but exacting teacher, showing Hannah how Harrison liked things done and sharing stories about the ranch's history. The two women developed an easy friendship, and Hannah found herself laughing more than she had in years. Harrison was often out on the range during the day, checking on his cattle and repairing fences damaged by the winter storms. But in the evenings, he would return to the house, and they would all share dinner together at the large kitchen table. These meals became Hannah's favorite part of the day. Harrison was an engaging conversationalist, full of stories about his adventures as a cowboy and his struggles to establish his ranch. He asked Hannah about her life too, and she found herself opening up to him in ways she never had with Charles. One evening in late February, about a month after Hannah had arrived at the ranch, they were sitting together in the parlor after Mrs. Chen had retired for the night. Harrison was repairing a bridle while Hannah worked on mending one of his shirts that had torn. The fire crackled between them and the silence was comfortable. "You have been here a month now," Harrison said without looking up from his work. "How are you finding it?" "I love it here," Hannah said honestly. "I feel useful and valued, which is something I never felt with Charles. Mrs. Chen is wonderful to work with and the ranch is beautiful. I could not ask for more." Harrison did look up then, his eyes searching her face. "Have you given any thought to your future, to what you want to do about your marriage?" Hannah set down her mending and folded her hands in her lap. "I have thought about it constantly. I want a divorce, Harrison. I do not want to be tied to Charles for the rest of my life, but I do not know how to even begin the process." "I can help with that," Harrison said. "There is a lawyer in Marysvale, Daniel Morrison. He is a good man, honest and fair. I could take you to meet with him, see what your options are." "That would be wonderful," Hannah said, relief washing over her. "But I have not saved enough money yet to pay for legal fees." "We can work something out," Harrison said. "Maybe I could advance you the money, and you can pay me back over time. Or we could ask Morrison to take payments. Either way, we will find a solution." Hannah felt her eyes filling with tears for what felt like the 100th time since arriving at the ranch. Harrison's kindness never ceased to overwhelm her. "You have already done so much for me. I do not know how I will ever repay you." "Hannah," Harrison said gently, setting aside his work and leaning forward, "you do not need to repay me. Seeing you smile, seeing you come back to life after what you went through, that is payment enough." Their eyes met across the space, and Hannah felt something shift in the air between them. It was the same feeling she had experienced several times over the past month, a pull toward Harrison that was becoming harder and harder to ignore. She told herself it was just gratitude, just her confusion over being rescued by a kind man after being treated so poorly by her husband. But deep down, she knew it was more than that. "Harrison," she began, not sure what she wanted to say but needing to say something. He stood abruptly, and for a moment Hannah thought he was going to leave. But instead he crossed to where she sat and dropped to one knee beside her chair. "Hannah, I need to tell you something, and I hope it does not upset you or make things awkward between us." Her heart was racing now, pounding so hard she was sure he must be able to hear it. "What is it?" "I have feelings for you," Harrison said, his voice low and intense. "I know I should not." I know you are still married, still recovering from what that bastard did to you, but I cannot help it. When I look at you, I see everything I have ever wanted. Strength and kindness and beauty and courage. You make me want to be a better man than I already am. And I know this is too soon, and I know you might not feel the same way, but I had to tell you. I had to be honest with you. Hannah could hardly breathe. A part of her wanted to tell him it was too soon, that she needed more time, that she was not ready. But a larger part, the part that had been growing stronger every day she spent in his company, wanted to throw caution to the wind and tell him the truth. I have feelings for you too, she whispered. I have been trying to ignore them, trying to tell myself it is just gratitude or confusion. But it is more than that, Harrison, so much more. When I am with you, I feel safe and seen and valued. You make me laugh. You make me believe in goodness again. I think I have been falling in love with you since the moment you caught me in the snow. Harrison's face transformed, hope and joy lighting his features. Do you mean that? I do, Hannah said, reaching out to cup his face with her hand. I know it is complicated. I know I am still legally married to Charles, but my heart knows who it belongs to, and it is not him. It is you, Harrison. It has been you from the start. Harrison covered her hand with his and turned to press a kiss to her palm. The gesture was so tender, so reverent, that Hannah felt tears spill down her cheeks. Then we will make this right, he said fiercely. We will get you divorced from that fool, and then, if you will have me, I will court you properly. I will do this right, Hannah. I promise you that. I believe you, Hannah said, and she did. She believed him in a way she had never believed anyone before. Harrison stood and pulled her gently to her feet, and then his arms were around her, and she was pressing her face against his chest, feeling his heart beat strong and steady beneath her cheek. He held her like she was something precious, something worth protecting, and Hannah felt the last of her walls crumble. She was falling, but for the first time in her life, she was not afraid of the landing. They stood like that for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms by the fire, the rest of the world falling away. And when Harrison finally pulled back to look down at her, his eyes were shining with an emotion so powerful it took her breath away. I will take care of you, he said softly. For as long as you will let me. That is my promise to you, Hannah. You will never be abandoned again. And looking up into his face, seeing the sincerity there, Hannah knew it was a promise he would keep. The next morning, Harrison and Hannah rode into Marysvale to meet with Daniel Morrison. The town was small but bustling, with a main street lined with shops and businesses. People nodded at Harrison as they passed, clearly respecting him, and Hannah felt proud to be at his side. Morrison's office was above the general store, and the lawyer himself was a thin, serious-looking man in his 40s with wire-rimmed spectacles. But his expression was kind as he invited them in and listened to Hannah's story. This is a clear case of desertion and endangerment, Morrison said when she had finished. In the Utah Territory, those are grounds for divorce. The process will take several months, but I see no reason why a judge would not grant your petition. How much will it cost? Hannah asked, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. Morrison named a figure that made her heart sink, but before she could respond, Harrison spoke up. I will cover the costs. Hannah can pay me back over time if she wishes, but money is not going to stop this from moving forward. Morrison raised an eyebrow. That is very generous of you, Mr. Zane. It is the right thing to do, Harrison said simply. Can we file the paperwork today? We can, Morrison said. He pulled out a stack of forms and began asking Hannah questions, recording her answers in careful script. When he asked about her husband's whereabouts, Hannah had to admit she had no idea. He could be anywhere. He was heading toward Marysvale when he left me, but I do not know if he continued on or turned back. We will need to make an effort to locate him and serve him with the divorce papers, Morrison explained. If we cannot find him, we can petition the court to proceed without his presence, but it will take longer. Do whatever you need to do, Hannah said. I just want this to be over. It took nearly 2 hours to complete all the paperwork, but when they left Morrison's office, Hannah felt lighter than she had in months. The wheels were in motion. She was taking control of her life again. As they walked back toward where they had left the horses, Hannah noticed a woman standing outside the general store, staring at them. She was well-dressed, perhaps in her early 30s, with blonde hair and cold blue eyes. When she saw Hannah looking, she approached them with a brittle smile. "Harrison Zane," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. "I heard you had taken in a stray. How charitable of you." Harrison's expression hardened. "Mrs. Aldridge, always a pleasure." The woman turned her attention to Hannah, looking her up and down with obvious disdain. "You must be the abandoned wife everyone is talking about. How tragic for you. Though I suppose you should count yourself lucky that Mr. Zane found you. He has always had a soft spot for lost causes." Hannah felt anger flare in her chest, but before she could respond, Harrison stepped between them. "That is enough, Eleanor. Hannah is my employee and my friend, and I will not have you speaking to her with disrespect." Eleanor's smile tightened. "Of course, I meant no offense. I was simply making conversation." She turned to leave, then paused and looked back. "Do give my regards to Mrs. Chen. Such an interesting household you maintain, Harrison. So very progressive of you." She swept away, leaving a palpable tension in her wake. Harrison was practically vibrating with suppressed anger. "I apologize for her. Eleanor Aldridge is a vicious gossip with too much time on her hands." "Who is she?" Hannah asked. "The wife of Thomas Aldridge, who owns the bank here in town. She has been trying to arrange a marriage between me and her sister for years, and she has never forgiven me for refusing." Hannah processed this information, feeling an unfamiliar twist of jealousy in her stomach. Her sister wanted to marry you. Her sister had no say in the matter. "Eleanor wanted the connection because my ranch is prosperous and my reputation is good. But I will not be married off like a prize bull, and I certainly will not marry someone I do not love." He took Hannah's hand, right there on the main street where anyone could see. "I will only marry for love, Hannah, and that is all I will say on the matter for now." His meaning was clear, and Hannah felt warmth spread through her chest. She squeezed his hand, not caring who saw them. Let the gossips talk. She had spent too much of her life worrying about what other people thought, and it had brought her nothing but misery. As they rode back to the ranch, Hannah felt like a new chapter of her life was beginning. The past was not erased, but it no longer had power over her. She was building something new, something better, and she was doing it with a man who saw her worth and treated her accordingly. Over the following months, as winter gave way to spring and then to summer, Hannah and Harrison's relationship deepened. They were careful to maintain propriety, knowing that gossip could damage both of their reputations. But in the evenings, after Mrs. Chen had gone to bed, they would sit together in the parlor, talking for hours about everything and nothing. Harrison told her about his childhood, about his father's death and his stepfather's cruelty, about the day his mother finally left, and how he had worked from the age of 13 to help support her and his sister. Hannah shared her own stories of loss and hardship, of her mother's death and the years of struggling alone in Denver. They discovered they had similar dreams for the future. Both wanted a real home, filled with love and laughter. Both valued hard work and honesty. Both had been hurt by people they trusted and had learned to be cautious with their hearts. But with each other, those walls came down, and they found themselves imagining a future together. In June, Daniel Morrison sent word that he had located Charles Vance in Salt Lake City. The divorce papers had been served, and Charles had not contested them. In fact, according to Morrison's source, Charles had seemed relieved to be rid of Hannah, which told her everything she needed to know about the man she had married. The final hearing was scheduled for August, and when Hannah received the notice, she felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief that it would soon be over, sadness for the dreams she had once held, and anticipation for the future that awaited her. "How are you feeling?" Harrison asked that evening when she told him the news. They were sitting on the porch, watching the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Free," Hannah said after a moment. "I feel free. Like I am finally becoming the person I was meant to be." Harrison reached over and took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "I am glad. You deserve to be free, Hannah. You deserve to be happy." "I am happy," she said, turning to look at him. "Happier than I have ever been in my life, and that is because of you." Harrison lifted her hand and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. "You give me too much credit. You saved yourself, Hannah. I just gave you a safe place to land." "You gave me so much more than that," Hannah insisted. "You gave me hope when I had none. You showed me what real kindness looks like. You made me believe in love again." Something intense flashed in Harrison's eyes. "Hannah, I need you to know the moment you are free, the moment that divorce is final, I am going to court you properly. I am going to take you to dinners and dances. I am going to bring you flowers and write you terrible poetry. And then, when enough time has passed that no one can accuse us of impropriety, I am going to ask you to marry me." Hannah's breath caught in her throat. "You are." "I am," Harrison said firmly, "because I love you, Hannah Vance. I love you with everything I am, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving that to you." Tears streamed down Hannah's face, but she was smiling so wide her cheeks hurt. "I love you too, Harrison Zane, so very much." Harrison pulled her close, and she rested her head on his shoulder, watching the sun sink below the horizon. In that moment, wrapped in his arms with the future stretching out before them like an unwritten page, Hannah felt a peace she had never known. She had been abandoned in the snow, left to die by a man who had promised to cherish her. But that abandonment had led her to Harrison, to real love, to a second chance at the life she had always wanted. The divorce was finalized on a warm August day. Hannah stood before the judge, answered his questions, and listened as he declared her marriage to Charles Vance dissolved. She walked out of that courthouse a free woman, with Harrison waiting for her on the steps. "How does it feel?" he asked, offering her his arm. "Like starting over," Hannah said. "Like I can breathe again." "Then breathe deep, Hannah, because your new life starts now." True to his word, Harrison courted Hannah properly over the following months. He took her to the social dances held in Marysvale's community hall, where they danced until her feet ached and her sides hurt from laughing. He brought her wildflowers from the meadows on his property, bouquets of columbine and Indian paintbrush that she arranged in jars on the kitchen table. He even attempted to write her poetry, which was so charmingly awful that Hannah kept every scrap of paper, treasuring them like love letters. They went on long rides together through the ranch land, with Harrison showing her every corner of his property and sharing his dreams for its future. He wanted to expand the herd, maybe add some horses for breeding. He wanted to build a bigger barn and add a proper bunkhouse for his ranch hands. And someday, he said, looking at her with eyes full of promise, he wanted to fill that big house with the sound of children's laughter. Mrs. Chen watched their courtship with approval, often finding excuses to leave them alone together. "About time Mr. Zane found someone worthy of him," she told Hannah one afternoon while they were baking bread. "He has been lonely too long. You are good for him, Hannah. You make him happy." He makes me happy too, Hannah said softly. I never knew it could be like this, Mrs. Chen. I never knew love could feel so easy and right. That is because it is real love, Mrs. Chen said wisely, not the false promises and pretty words that some men offer. Mr. Zane's love is steady and true, like bedrock. You can build a life on that kind of love. As autumn painted the leaves gold and red, Hannah felt her own transformation complete. She was no longer the frightened, frozen woman Harrison had found in the snow. She was strong and confident, loved and valued. She had found her place in the world, and it was here on this ranch with this man. On a crisp October evening, Harrison asked Hannah to take a walk with him after dinner. They strolled through the ranch yard and up a small hill that overlooked the property. From here, you could see the house with its warm lights, the barn and outbuildings, the fences that marked the boundaries of Harrison's land, and beyond that, the mountains rising against the darkening sky. "This is my favorite spot," Harrison said, standing behind Hannah with his arms wrapped around her waist. "When I first bought this land, I used to come up here every evening and just look at it. I could hardly believe it was mine, that I had actually accomplished what I had set out to do." "You should be proud," Hannah said, leaning back against his solid warmth. "You have built something wonderful here." "I have built the ranch," Harrison said, "but you have helped make it a home. That is a gift I can never repay." He turned her in his arms so that she was facing him, and in the fading light she could see that he was nervous. "Hannah, I know we have only been courting for a few months. Some people might say it is too soon. But I have known since the day I found you that you were special, that you were meant to be in my life. Every day since has only confirmed that feeling." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. When he opened it, Hannah gasped. Inside was a ring, simple but beautiful, with a small diamond set in a gold band. "Hannah Vance, I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. You are my best friend, my partner, my everything. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Hannah was crying openly now, nodding before she could even find her voice. "Yes," she finally managed to say. "Yes, Harrison, I will marry you. I love you so much." Harrison slipped the ring onto her finger, and then he was kissing her, really kissing her for the first time, and Hannah felt like she was flying. His lips were soft and warm, and he held her like she was the most precious thing in the world. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathless and grinning like fools. "When?" Hannah asked. "When can we get married?" "As soon as you want," Harrison said. "Tomorrow if you would like, or we can wait and have a proper wedding with all the trimmings. Whatever you want, Hannah. I just want you to be happy." "I am happy," Hannah said, laughing through her tears. "I want to marry you soon, Harrison. I do not need a big wedding or a fancy dress. I just need you." "Then we will do it soon," Harrison promised. "Maybe in a few weeks. That will give us time to arrange things and invite the people we care about." They made their plans standing on that hilltop as the stars began to appear overhead. They decided on a small ceremony at the ranch, with just a few close friends and the ranch hands. Mrs. Chen would prepare the food, and they would say their vows in the parlor where they had spent so many evenings falling in love. When they returned to the house, Mrs. Chen took one look at Hannah's glowing face and the ring on her finger and let out a whoop of joy. "Finally," she exclaimed. "I was beginning to think Mr. Zane would never get around to asking." "Hey now," Harrison protested, laughing. "I was waiting for the right moment." "Every moment with someone you love is the right moment," Mrs. Chen said, pulling Hannah into a tight hug. "I am so happy for you, child. So very happy." The next few weeks passed in a flurry of preparations. Hannah sewed herself a simple but elegant dress in cream-colored fabric, with lace at the collar and cuffs. Harrison ordered a new suit from the tailor in town, and spent his evenings making sure the house was perfect for the ceremony. Mrs. Chen cooked and baked until the kitchen was overflowing with delicious smells. The day of the wedding dawned clear and beautiful, with the autumn air crisp and the sky a brilliant blue. Hannah dressed with Mrs. Chen's help, her hands trembling slightly as the older woman fastened the buttons down her back. "You look beautiful," Mrs. Chen said, her own eyes misty. "Mr. Zane is a lucky man." "I am the lucky one," Hannah said. "A year ago I thought my life was over. I thought I would die alone in the snow, but instead I found everything I ever wanted." The ceremony was simple but perfect. Hannah walked down the stairs to find Harrison waiting for her in the parlor, looking impossibly handsome in his new suit. His eyes filled with tears when he saw her, and Hannah felt her own tears start to fall. The circuit preacher, who traveled between the small towns in the area, spoke about love and commitment and partnership. But Hannah barely heard the words. She was too focused on Harrison, on the way he held her hands like they were infinitely precious, on the way he looked at her like she was his entire world. When it came time for the vows, Harrison's voice was rough with emotion. "I promise to love you and cherish you for all my days. I promise to stand by your side through every storm and celebrate with you in every joy. I promise to build a life with you filled with laughter and love, and all the dreams we have yet to dream." Hannah's voice was equally emotional as she made her own promises. "I promise to be your partner in all things. I promise to support your dreams and share your burdens. I promise to love you fiercely and faithfully for the rest of my life. You saved me, Harrison, in more ways than one, and I will spend every day showing you what that means to me." When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Harrison pulled Hannah into his arms and kissed her deeply, and everyone cheered. Mrs. Chen was crying openly, and the ranch hands were grinning and slapping each other on the back. The celebration that followed was joyful and raucous. They ate Mrs. Chen's delicious food and drank toasts to the happy couple. Harrison's ranch hands played music on fiddle and guitar, and Harrison swept Hannah into dance after dance until she was dizzy and laughing. As the evening wore on, and the guests began to depart, Harrison pulled Hannah aside. "Ready to start our new life, Mrs. Zane?" Hannah smiled up at her husband, her heart so full she thought it might burst. "I have been ready since the day you found me in the snow and told me my husband was a fool." "He was a fool," Harrison said fiercely, cupping her face in his hands. "The biggest fool who ever lived. Because he let you go, and I get to keep you forever." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise, and Hannah knew that she was finally, truly home. The first months of marriage were everything Hannah had dreamed of and more. She and Harrison settled into a comfortable rhythm, working side by side during the day and falling into each other's arms at night. The ranch thrived under their joint care, with Harrison managing the cattle and land while Hannah oversaw the house and finances. She discovered she had a head for numbers, and she helped Harrison organize his accounts and plan for the future. Mrs. Chen continued to work for them, but with Hannah now sharing the household duties, the older woman had more time to pursue her own interests. She started a small garden where she grew Chinese vegetables and herbs, and she began teaching Hannah to cook some of her traditional dishes. Winter came again, and with it, the anniversary of the day Harrison had found Hannah in the snow. They marked the occasion quietly, standing together on the porch and watching the snow fall gently over the ranch. "A year ago, I thought I was going to die," Hannah said softly, leaning against Harrison's side. "I thought Charles leaving me in that storm was the end of my story." "Instead, it was the beginning," Harrison said, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "The beginning of your real life." "Our real life," Hannah corrected. Everything I have, everything I am, I share with you." Harrison turned her to face him, his expression serious. "You know that is not true, right? You do not owe me anything, Hannah. You have made yourself into the woman you are. I just gave you a safe place to do it." "You gave me everything," Hannah insisted. "Love and safety and a home and a future. You gave me a reason to keep fighting when I wanted to give up." "We gave those things to each other," Harrison said. "That is what marriage is, Hannah. Not one person saving the other, but two people choosing to build a life together. And I thank God every day that I found you in that storm, because my life would be so much emptier without you." They stood together in the falling snow, two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built something beautiful from the ashes of Hannah's old life. And as Hannah looked up at her husband's face, she knew that every hardship she had endured had been worth it, because it had led her here to this moment, to this love. The following spring brought unexpected news. Hannah had been feeling unwell for several weeks, tired and nauseous, and when Mrs. Chen suggested the reason, Hannah's first reaction was disbelief. "A baby," she whispered, her hand going to her stomach. "Do you really think so?" "I have seen that look before," Mrs. Chen said with a knowing smile. "You should see a doctor to be certain, but yes, I believe you are with child." When Hannah told Harrison that evening, she had never seen such joy on anyone's face. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing and whooping, and then he set her down gently and dropped to his knees, pressing his ear to her still flat stomach. "Hello in there," he said softly. "I am your father, and I love you already. You are going to have the best mother in the world, and I promise to do everything I can to be worthy of being your father." Hannah ran her fingers through his hair, tears streaming down her face. "You are going to be an amazing father. Our child is so lucky to have you." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, and as Hannah's belly grew, so did their excitement. Harrison became almost comically protective, trying to keep Hannah from doing any heavy work and insisting she rest more than she wanted to. Mrs. Chen and Hannah often exchanged amused glances as Harrison fussed over them both. "I am pregnant, not fragile," Hannah protested one afternoon when Harrison tried to carry a basket of laundry for her. "I can still do my work." "I know you can," Harrison said, taking the basket anyway. "But why should you when I am right here? Let me take care of you, Hannah. Please." How could she argue with that? So she let him fuss, let him bring her tea and prop pillows behind her back and rub her aching feet in the evenings, and she loved him even more for it. Their son was born on a crisp November morning, arriving just as the sun broke over the mountains. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Harrison paced outside the bedroom door, terrified by the sounds of Hannah's pain. But when Mrs. Chen finally emerged with a smile on her face and told him he could come in, he rushed to Hannah's side. She lay in their bed, exhausted but radiant, cradling a tiny bundle wrapped in a soft blanket. When she looked up at Harrison, her smile was brilliant. "Come meet your son." Harrison approached slowly, almost reverently, and when Hannah pulled back the blanket to reveal a red, wrinkled face topped with dark hair, he started to cry. "He is perfect," Harrison whispered. "Absolutely perfect." "Do you want to hold him?" Hannah asked. Harrison nodded, unable to speak, and Hannah carefully transferred the baby into his arms. Harrison held his son like he was made of glass, staring down at the tiny face with an expression of wonder. "What should we name him?" Hannah asked. They had discussed names endlessly over the past months, but had never quite settled on one. But as Harrison looked down at his son, he knew exactly what felt right. "Henry," he said. "Henry Vance Zane, after your mother's maiden name, so a part of her lives on in him." Hannah's eyes filled with fresh tears. Her mother's maiden name had been Vance, a coincidence she had always found ironic after marrying Charles. But to give that name to her son, to honor her mother in this way, was a gift she had not expected. "Henry," she repeated softly, "it is perfect." Life with a baby was chaotic and exhausting and more wonderful than either of them had imagined. Henry was a healthy, happy child who grew like a weed. Harrison was a devoted father, getting up for nighttime feedings and walking the floor with Henry when he was fussy. He taught Hannah how to swaddle properly and sang ridiculous songs that made her laugh and made Henry coo with delight. As the years passed, their family grew. 2 years after Henry's birth, they welcomed a daughter they named Grace. She had Harrison's honey-colored eyes and Hannah's determination. Then came another son, James, who was quieter and more thoughtful than his siblings. And finally, when Hannah was 30, they had their last child, a daughter named Lily who was fearless and wild from the moment she could walk. The ranch prospered along with their family. Harrison expanded his herd and built the bigger barn he had dreamed of. He hired more ranch hands and became known throughout the territory as a fair employer and honest businessman. Hannah managed the household and the finances, and together they built something that would outlast them both. Mrs. Chen remained with them, transitioning from housekeeper to beloved grandmother figure to the children. She taught them Cantonese songs and told them stories about her homeland. When she passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 72, the entire family mourned her deeply. But through the sorrows came joys. They watched their children grow into capable, kind adults. Henry took over much of the ranch work, showing a natural talent for managing cattle and land. Grace married a teacher from Marysvale and started a school in the area. James became a veterinarian, caring for animals throughout the territory. And Lily, their wild child, became a writer, chronicling the stories of the people and places of the West. Hannah and Harrison grew old together, their hair turning gray and their faces lining with the marks of years well lived. They still took evening walks together, holding hands and watching the sun set over the mountains. They still sat together in the parlor where they had fallen in love, sharing stories and laughter with their grandchildren. On their 30th wedding anniversary, Harrison took Hannah back to the spot where he had proposed, the hilltop overlooking the ranch. They moved slower now, and the climb took longer, but the view was just as beautiful as it had been all those years ago. "You ever regret it?" Harrison asked as they stood together, his arm around her waist. "Marrying me, staying here." Hannah turned to look at her husband, at the man who had saved her life in every way a person could be saved. His face was lined now, his hair more silver than brown, but his eyes still held that same warmth and kindness that had captivated her from the beginning. "Not for a single second," she said firmly. "You gave me a life beyond my wildest dreams, Harrison. You gave me love and family and home. You gave me everything." "You gave me the same," Harrison said, pulling her close. "When I found you in that snow, I had no idea I was finding the other half of my soul. But that is what you are, Hannah. My partner, my love, my everything. You made my life complete." They kissed then, as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. Two people who had found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and built a love that had lasted a lifetime. "Charles was a fool," Harrison said, echoing the words he had spoken so long ago. "The biggest fool in the world." Hannah laughed, the sound ringing out clear and joyful over the ranch that had become her home. "Yes, he was, but his foolishness led me to you, and for that I cannot bring myself to hate him. Because every step of my journey, every hardship and every heartbreak brought me here, to you, to our life together, and I would not change a single moment of it." "Nor would I," Harrison said, "not one single moment." They stood together on that hilltop as the stars began to appear overhead, surrounded by the land they had built together, the family they had created, and the love that had sustained them through everything. Hannah thought back to that frightened woman stumbling through the snow, abandoned and hopeless, and she marveled at how far she had come. She had been abandoned in the snow by her husband, left to die in a winter storm. But the cowboy had found her, had told her Charles was a fool, and had given her a second chance at life. And she had taken that chance and built something beautiful from it. She had found real love, the kind that lasted through years and hardships and all the challenges life could throw at them. As they made their way back down the hill toward the house glowing with warm light and full of their children and grandchildren, Hannah squeezed Harrison's hand and smiled. This was the life she was meant to live. This was the love she was meant to have. And every day she spent with Harrison Zane was a gift she would treasure until her last breath. The years continued to pass, gentle and sweet. Harrison and Hannah watched their grandchildren grow, delighting in each milestone and achievement. They celebrated birthdays and holidays, their home always full of laughter and love. And through it all, they remained devoted to each other, their love deepening with every passing year. When Harrison became ill in their 65th year, Hannah nursed him with the same fierce determination she had shown when rebuilding her life all those years ago. She sat by his bedside, holding his hand and telling him stories of their life together. And when he passed peacefully one autumn morning, surrounded by his family, Hannah grieved deeply but found comfort in the knowledge that they had lived their love story to its fullest. She continued on at the ranch for several more years, supported by her children and grandchildren. She told them stories of their grandfather, of the cowboy who had saved her in the snow and taught her what real love looked like. She made sure they understood that love was not just pretty words and grand gestures, but also steady commitment and daily kindness, and choosing each other every day. When Hannah herself passed away at the age of 78, she did so peacefully in her sleep, in the same house where she had spent the happiest years of her life. Her children found her in the morning with a smile on her face, and clutched in her hand was the first terrible poem Harrison had ever written for her, carefully preserved all these years. They buried her next to Harrison on the hilltop overlooking the ranch, where they had shared so many sunsets and made so many plans. And on their shared headstone, their children inscribed the words that had defined their love story: Hannah Vance Zane and Harrison Zane. She was abandoned in the snow. He said her husband was a fool. Together, they built a life of love. The ranch continued to thrive under the care of their descendants, and the story of Hannah and Harrison became part of the family legacy, told and retold to each new generation. It was a reminder that love could bloom even in the darkest circumstances, that second chances existed for those brave enough to take them, and that sometimes the worst moments of our lives led us to the best ones. Hannah had been abandoned in the snow by a man who did not value her. But a cowboy had found her, had called that man a fool, and had shown her what real love looked like. And from that moment of salvation in a winter storm had grown a love story that lasted a lifetime and beyond, a testament to the power of kindness, the strength of true partnership, and the enduring nature of real love. The end.